Hello everyone, welcome to another video. I am going to be showing, this game in this video. I'll be uploading another video as well, and I'll hopefully either, late tonight or tomorrow on the 2nd or 3rd of March, I'll be uploading a third chess video to make up for the fact I haven't done anything for about a week or so. Anyway, getting on to the game in question. This is a game in the 4NCL League, and I'm board 1 for my team against FIDE Master Andy Lewis, who is about, I think, around 2270 at the moment. His last FIDE rating was around there, but he has been above 2300, hence the FM title, and he is quite a long sort of campaigner. He's been around on the chess scene in the UK for quite a while. So what I had prepared for him, and I played d4. He played knight f6, knight f3, avoiding some lines with c4, like the Budapest Gambit, for example. c5, going into a Benoni type position. I can play stuff like e3 or c3, or even c4, but I felt this time I would go into a Benoni with d5. e6, c4, then he takes and I take, and d6, knight c3, g6, e4, and fianchetto. We've gone into the modern Benoni, where black has traded their e-pawn for my c-pawn. So what black will often try and do is castle and then generally attack on the queen side, the left-hand side of the board from our perspective. And we are going to try and push our e-pawn up to e5 and attack on the king side. If we can get that going, usually white is better. But if black restrains us enough and gets their queenside pawns running down the board, then often black is usually getting enough initiative to cause a lot of problems for white. So the move h3 looks a bit bizarre because it's a pawn move which does not help with development. But what it does is it restricts two black pieces. Often black will play bishop g4 trying to get rid of a piece by taking my knight. Because what will happen is that if they keep all the bishops and knights on the board, because I have more space and black is rather cramped, they can often have trouble developing pieces in the ideal way. So h3 stops that plan, and there's a secondary idea revolving around g4, which is their f6 knight will often go to g4 and then sort of pivot around there to e5, and that's another way to attempt to trade knights. G4 stops both castles. Bishop d3 is a good safety move, and this is mainline theory, simply holding the e4 pawn in check. And also the bishop is useful in the centre of the board. Rook e8 was played. b5 has got a fun line that I played a few weeks ago against a FIDE Master I was having a training game with. I don't think I covered that on this channel. But in those lines, if black instead sacrifices with b5, there's a ton of theory, and eventually black, I think, goes down a pawn, but they have enough kind of fighting pieces to actually be level. But rook e8 is very sensible. I castle to get out of the line of the rook. a6, the idea is b5. a4 clamps down, and often white goes a5, which I never got the chance to play in this game. But a5 is useful because if b5 you have the en passant rule, where you take on b6. Knight bd7, rook e1, and then a very unusual move. Again, normally black will play knight g4 to e5, and then that way if I take, they take back with a piece. But here they go knight to e5 straight away, and I don't really want to let black get away with this. If I retreat my bishop, for example, black can trade knights and have no problems at all. So I trade, and this forces black to either take with the pawn, which will make my d5 pawn a long-term asset, because there'll be no black pawns preventing it from reaching the end of the board and promoting in the endgame. So rook takes is a more sensible move. Bishop f4, and I was expecting a move like rook e8, and then I may be in time to play e5 very, very soon. Perhaps not straight away, but I could soon play bishop h2, push my f-pawn up to f4, and then play e5. So instead, black plays a shocking move. Knight h5. They're letting me capture the rook for 5 points, and then I only have to give back 3. So this was a really interesting move, and it's possible that I don't need to take it. I may play bishop h2 again and then push f4, but at the time I don't want black to get away with this. I need to get the material. Bishop takes. And the thing is, though, that the dark squares, the d4, e5, and surrounding dark squares, are fully under black's control, and I don't have a bishop anymore that controls them. So if I'm not completely, vigilant, black will actually get a lot of compensation for the exchange. My move queen f3 doesn't really help me in any way, to be honest. It prevents my f-pawn moving up. My plan had been to prevent certain ideas like knight f4 being too effective, trying to hold black's pieces on the king side, or trying to stop them attacking me on the king side, I should say. But this move does not really help me too much, queen f3. And I then retreat the bishop to f1 so that knight f4 can't attack the bishop. And this simply allows black to then fight on the queen side as they normally do. My pawns are a bit weak. The b pawn is backwards, it can't catch up to the a pawn. And the black pawns, if they get to b5, will again cause me a lot of problems, gaining lots of space. So queen e3, I'm attempting to go g3, f4. Bishop d7. And I was going to play g3, that was my idea. But can you find the problem with g3? What would black play? There's the move, knight takes g3, and if I let it go and don't take back, black is clearly better. So if I take the knight, bishop d4, and my queen is pinned. I will lose that queen for only 2 pieces, a bishop and a knight. So I may as well resign in this position. That's why I ended up playing king h1 in order to be able to then let my f-pawn move, and that way I'm not pinned on d4, e3, f2, g1 by the bishop. Bishop d4 anyway, and I keep my queen on the dark squares. It's basically playing the role of a bishop right now. Queen b4, keeping the pin, putting pressure on the b pawn. b5 is still possible to play for black very soon. And here I think I should play g3, to be honest, and then keep my pawns on the dark squares in order to control them better. However, I was feeling like I was getting crushed on the left-hand side, the queen side. Therefore, I need to counter on the king side. Black is forced to retreat and then f4. The problem you may see is that my king has very few defenders now, which played a role in the next few turns. So rook e8, black activates the rook. I try to keep my bishop near the king and control the e4 pawn. b5 from black, takes, and I was expecting pawn takes, to be honest, but bishop takes was played. And the bishop now is fairly useful. It's aiming at lots of squares. My queen is very restricted from moving to anywhere, really. And my rooks can't go to f1, which may be useful in the future. And I can't double my rooks with rook e2 and rook a1 to e1 in order to play e5, because if I play rook e2 or rook e3, I'll get taken. So I felt like I was slowly getting squashed. And even though the position is meant to be better for white on a computer, I'm not sure I can play that well. Therefore, I chose to take the decision and play e5. What influenced my decision as well was that my opponent was now down to about, I think, 2 or 3 minutes on their clock, and so was I. So this was more like a blitz game at this stage, even with the 15-second increment. So we traded, and I lost the e5 pawn, but then hoped I could get some initiative with d6. If this pawn can push to d7 and stay there, not being taken, the pawn is incredibly powerful. Even on d6, it's causing black to worry about it. Bishop d7, blockading, preventing the pawn moving up the board. I could take on a6, and I probably should have done, but I was nervous about various sacrifices that black could do. But it turns out that black did them anyway, with knight g4. Even though my rook on d1 is more centralized and involved in everything, black still felt like he could give away his knight. I think I have to take the challenge, otherwise black has simply won a pawn and weakened my king. Queen g4, and I missed the move which prevents all of black's threats. And I played a very subpar move here with only about 30 seconds on my clock. What did I miss? Can you find white's best move to prevent the black queen checking the king? Correct move, queen h6. And this is apparently about +3 for white, because with my extra rook for bishop and my knight able to jump into d5, I should be able to convert to a win from this position. I missed this plan though, and I mean he must have done it as well, otherwise he wouldn't have given up a knight. So I played queen f2, preventing queen h4, and he played bishop g3. But the idea behind it was that if queen h5 is played and king g1, then bishop d4 pinning my queen, I thought that minimum I could always trade a lot of the pieces and give up my rook for the bishop, capture this pawn, and I have a knight for 2 pawns, but with my d6 pawn again being very powerful and black having no checks. I had thought this might be enough to win. However, this was not played in the game. Bishop g3 was played. Then I traded the rooks in order to not be the exchange down. Played queen f3, thinking maybe I was alright. And got a check. Bishop d7, going back to its duty of blockading my pawn. And here I saw some tricks with knight d5. My idea was knight f6 check with a fork. And even knight e7 check might be useful as well in certain positions. But this is a terrible blunder, and black missed the winning move. Can you see black's best move on the board? So he had the same idea, but he got the moves wrong. He played bishop b5 in the game, preventing my king getting out of the net, the mating net, the kill zone, with the plan queen h2 mate. But I was able to prevent it with knight f6 check. What he missed was that he could do it the other way round. He could play queen h2, check, king f1 is forced, then bishop b4 at b5, and I have no way to get out of check using my king or taking the bishop. Therefore, the lesser of the evils is to do rook d3, and black can even wait a move before taking my rook. He can take the pawn that was my key attacking piece, and the reason that I thought I was ahead. Then there's not really much I can play, and black's next move will be to take my rook with the bishop, and black will have 4 pawns for a knight, which it should easily be holding, and probably actually winning for black. So we both missed this. I think I actually saw this about 5 seconds after I played knight d5, but at the critical time I missed it. And he missed it, but again, we're both low on time, so this was not the most high-quality game. Bishop b5, knight f6, king f8, knight h7. I was hoping that he would do queen takes, then I can take the bishop on g3, getting out of all my problems. And if he moves king g7, I can play queen f6, trade the queens off the board. And even though I lose a knight, I'm going to push my d7 pawn up the board and win back the bishop. And then I'll just be a rook up for a couple of pawns. So just to show that line, king g7, queen f6, check. Black's most challenging move is to take the queens off, capture a free knight. d7, there's no way to prevent me making a queen because my rook is always guarding it. So bishop takes is forced, rook takes, and this should be winning. Rook up for, what, 3 pawns? And I can probably play rook a7 quite soon, winning the a6 pawn as well. But black played king g8. I checked. Black went back to f8. I checked again. So I was thinking maybe a repetition was good. I had seen another move, but also I was gaining time on increment because I was only spending a second or two to play these moves, and each time you make a move you gain 15 seconds. So that really mattered at this stage. And it's not quite 3-move repetition. We've had this exact position twice, because the one point we had this position earlier, Black had a pawn on h7, so it wasn't an identical position. However, if I played knight h7 again, it will be a draw by repeating moves. And I spent maybe 30 seconds just making sure there was no win for Black before playing knight g4, protecting h2. Bishop d7 from Black, trying to go for my knight, but giving my king the f1 square if everything went badly. Rook f1 was my move, going for mate on f7. Black stops it with f5, but weakens the king. So I then found a check, king g7, and then, in time trouble with only maybe 20 seconds on my clock, I played a terrible move which blundered away the win. What would you play as white? So the winning move is, I think, queen a7 or queen b7 both win. And for some reason, in my head, I had thought that after pawn takes knight, I thought Black had an extra move here, and that for some reason my queen was still on a8. I just sort of had a complete blind spot, because I thought Black could go. I thought I would then play queen b7, and Black would then go queen h2 mate. So I basically gave Black 2 moves in a row. Of course, I can take this bishop. King will move to maybe h6. And then there's several ways to win. But one of them, for example, is to play rook f7. And there's no checkmate now because I have f1 for my king. So moment of madness. I played bishop d5, thinking of queen g8 mate. Of course, Black takes the knight, and I had thought they were going to take the pawn, and then my rook comes up to f7, but because the pawn is in the way, I no longer have that plan. In fact, I also had queen f8 as well. But because the queen is taken, there's now so many discovered checks where their g3 bishop moves out the way and ends up mating me, and I was so low on time, so I do end up having to take the draw, with my queen just going to h8 and then going to d8. The king can't get out of the net. He can't go to f4, and if he goes to the h file, wherever it is, I check back on h8. I don't take their bishop, and then keep going back to d8. And we got a draw by repetition in this line. And it turns out my bishop d5 move did draw, so I had to do this, otherwise I was losing. Not the best game or the most high quality, but interesting points in the match. I'm still fairly happy to have been on the better side against an FM, and I think if I'd have had maybe an extra 5 minutes on my clock, I would have just been able to squeak the win. But overall, it was not a bad result. Our team did end up winning the match, I think 3-1. So actually my game was not that relevant. Even if I'd lost, we'd have still won it 2.5 to 1.5. Overall though, excellent performance by my team. We won on board 2, and I think we won on board 4 as well, and we drew on board 1 and board 3. And so far I've not yet lost a game in the 4NCL. So hope you enjoyed the video, and see you in the next one. Bye.